Phoenix, Arizona, with the legendary world champion who has the highest percentage of sellouts ever at Madison Square Garden for a wrestler, a main event wrestler. And you were known as the reflection of perfection, the #1 selection, superstar Billy Graham. And I came all the way to Phoenix. I actually drove across the country for one.
Risking your life.
Literally risking my life because you had something very important you wanted to talk about. We did another interview with you a few months ago that was more of a historical perspective of your entire career. But today you want to talk about current issues and some current things that are really bothering you. So you want to just briefly touch on it before we get into the interview itself.
Yeah, I do want to really get in depth on my personal feelings about Bruno going into the Hall of Fame and this sudden change of heart that Bruno has had from almost 35 years of pure bitter hatred for the WWE and for Vince McMahon, and now all of a sudden this change of heart and now embracing the whole organization. And so we'll get a little more in depth into that issue a little bit later. But I would like to comment on the statement you just made about having the most sellouts, highest percentage of sellout main events in Madison Square Garden. It's very interesting that I had 19 out of 20 main event sellouts that I was involved in Madison Square Garden, which is the all-time highest percentage for any main event wrestler.
Even higher than Hulk Hogan and Bruno Sammartino.
Yeah, percentage-wise, 19 out of 20, out of anybody.
Yeah.
Not the most sellouts, of course, but I wasn't the champion that. Exactly,
Had your title, career actually chopped off right when you were really peaking popularity. Right. And actually, you were a heel, but you were becoming a babyface.
Exactly. And it was very ironic because the only non-sellout and Vince Sr. told me that he said, Billy, we're not going to sell out tonight because the fans don't believe that the High Chief Peter Maivia,
that's the Rock's
grandfather.
Yeah.
The Rock's grandfather. Man, I worshipped in San Francisco that I wrestled against and helped me polish off my career with I was tag team partners with Pat Patterson. And he said they don't believe that a Samoan chief will be the next WWF champion. Right. And he said, so that's why it's not going to sell out. But it didn't sell out, which was almost like 22,000 people in the main auditorium. Yeah. But we had over 20,000 people to see an event that they knew was not going to change hands. Yeah. So I said that's still a pretty good.
Shows you were a pretty huge draw.
Yeah, a huge draw and very ironic. And I did everything within my power to put over Peter and even eating a raw chicken and all the antics of him being a wild Samoan and
he was covered in tattoos.
Oh yeah. He was an official chief, and he had the Samoan tattoos from mid thigh to mid chest, and it was a very funny thing. Well, it wasn't funny. He almost died. He said to the
poisoning, right?
Yeah, blood poisoning, and he said they wanted to make him a Samoan chief when he was down in Samoa, and he says, "Okay, well that's great. I'd love to be a chief, but I'm only on the island for 6 days. So you got 6 days to do it." And they said, "But wait a minute, it takes 6 months." Right. To put all this ink on you. And he said, I got 6 days. And so they went around all the islands, got all the tattoo artists, and they started tattooing him, 4 or 5 guys at the same time, filled him full of ink, and he got blood poisoning, and they had to rush him to the hospital. He was dying because of all the ink going into him at one time, and they saved his life, got out, and they started, once he overcame the illness in the hospital, they started tattooing him in the hospital as well. So he got he had the full Samoan chief tattoo display at the time I wrestled him. So the only non-sellout was against the Rock's grandfather. But still, we had over 20,000 people non-sellout situation is quite remarkable.
Well, speaking of the Rock and the Rock's grandfather, I know you were pretty close with the Rock's family, his father and his grandfather. Do you have any memories of the Rock? I'm sure you've had some encounters with him over the years.
The Rock.
Yeah, the real Rock.
The current Rock.
The current Rock.
Yeah.
The movie star.
The movie star, yeah.
Wrestler, WrestleMania wrestler.
Yeah, it was, I really haven't, I've just passed by him on different occasions, very friendly, very, very sociable to me and everything. And it was very interesting because not long ago, I never watched WWE programming because it's just too boring for me. I've seen it all. I've heard it all. Yeah. There's nothing against the company. It's just that the talent pool is starting to dissipate now, and it's just
why they're bringing in movie stars and MMA fighters.
That's correct. That's correct. And this goes into the Bruno thing a little bit. I was watching just not long ago. They were preparing to come here to Phoenix for the Royal Rumble.
Yeah. They actually sent an announcer from WWE Aftermath to interview you here, which I found was pretty interesting.
Correct. They did, and right here in my little apartment.
Very studio.
Yeah. And
a great story on your painting.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and very, very accommodating. Really nice folks that represented the WWE. And but the odd thing I found was Bruno making this current statement that he's realizes the programming has changed now. As watching right on that television, right before they came to Phoenix for Royal Rumble, and The Rock was in the ring cutting a promo against CM Punk.
Right.
And he said, I remember, because I was really shocked at what he said. He was comparing CM Punk to candy bars. Okay. And he said, you're not like a Milky Way. You're not like a Snickers bar. He says, and Elisa Almond Joy has 2 nuts. Well, is that family programming? That was a very hard line. And Bruno was saying now the programming has changed. That's one reason.
It with The Rock a little bit.
The Rock has always been on the cutting edge sexually innuendos in his promos, always.
That's one of the reasons why he's entertaining, because that's controversial.
Exactly right. Exactly right. But that one statement really came back to haunt me with Bruno saying, yeah, I've been watching the programming is now family-friendly programming. And I'm thinking, really, The Rock saying Lisa Almond Joy Candy Bar has 2 nuts and you don't see him, Punk? That's very borderline. Yeah. Very borderline. So that really disturbed me.
Problems with it being borderline, you just find it a little contradictory.
Very contradictory for Bruno to make the statement that is now family-friendly programming, with statements like that being made in the middle of the ring of a WWE ring.
And before we go any further about Bruno Sammartino, I'm obviously a fan of his. I'm actually part Italian. And you were a huge fan of Bruno Sammartino.
I still am.
Yeah, exactly.
I still am. I respect him. I have tremendous respect for the man. I idolize him. I took the belt from him. He passed the torch to me. Yeah. And really, when he did that cemented this belt.
That's the WWF,
yeah, the pre-W.
WWE.
Exactly.
And that stood for Worldwide Wrestling Federation,
correct,
which was then shortened to World Wrestling Federation.
Correct.
Then there was a big lawsuit with the Animal Wildlife Federation.
Right, yes.
Which they unfortunately lost, and then they had to change their name to World Wrestling Entertainment.
So this belt is Bruno's belt. That's the original belt that Bruno wore all those years.
Yeah.
And so I'm very proud of wearing that belt. And
you actually won it from Bruno.
I actually won it from Bruno, and he wanted to retire. He was hurting. Back then, there were a lot of rings, Hannibal, that were boxing rings that we wrestled on, and they were very hard on the body, very traumatic falling and taking your falls on these hard boxing. And we were wrestling every night, So I have tremendous admiration and respect for Bruno Sammartino. Right. Absolutely. absolutely. I just worship the guy because he was and is a living legend.
Right.
There's no question about it. But that statement that he made really bothered me, that he's been watching the programming now and it's more family friendly and he's fine with the programming and so like I said, we'll get into that a little bit later.
More
But
specific, that you know some inside information that you're going to share with people a little bit later. But you briefly mentioned Pat Patterson. Now, you were actually a protege of Pat Patterson. He helped you out a lot when you got into the business.
Oh, yes.
I was fortunate enough to meet him before, and he was very nice to me. But you had some ups and downs with Pat. You've apologized publicly for it. You've apologized in your book.
Yep.
Do you want to say anything about Pat Patterson before we go any further?
Oh, well, I think Pat Patterson, no question, was one of the greatest in-ring performers along with Ray Stevens.
Right.
Their feud was legendary in San Francisco. And then eventually they became tag team partners.
Right.
And so it was an honor for me to be a tag team partner of Pat Patterson, to be taken underneath his wing and be led really by the hand, match after match, night after night with Pat Patterson. I have nothing but the utmost respect for this man, and I appreciate what he what he had to go through, taking me as green as I was and molding me. I was in there with Pat Patterson, Ray Stevens, Cyclo Negro, which were fantastic, and Peter Maiva, I mean, really the cream of professionalism. And so I was very blessed to be his tag team partner.
And he was so talented that for decades, literally, he was Vince McMahon's right-hand man, putting together all the finishes, which is kind of the endings to all the matches.
Yes.
So in that peak
genius.
Period, a genius. That's not a far-off statement whatsoever.
No.
He's a wrestling genius, and everything, as far as you're concerned, is water under the bridge. There was a lot going on at a certain period of time.
Yes.
But that's over and done with.
Absolutely.
Now, before we get into how popular and how famous you were in the New York territory, which went on to become WWE, and when you were world champion, you actually were popular in territories all around, not only the States, but the world. Even were popular in Japan. You still have a lot of Japanese fans. But you actually had a couple of fans, actually 3 fans, that went on to become huge, famous, legendary wrestlers, and they're all actually in the WWE Hall of Fame now. So I'd like to, before we get into anything else, I want to talk about some of those people. A lot of people don't know that Ric Flair, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, was actually one of your proteges. He wrote in his book, actually, that he knew he could never have the body of superstar Billy Graham, but he would try his best to have promos that were as good as yours. And he went on to be possibly one of the best promo guys ever. This is certainly one of my favorites. So do you want to share with us some of your memories of Ric Flair, who used to carry your bags around, who used to wash your car? When he
would drive my car from towns like Fargo, North Dakota, back to Minneapolis when I was lazy and wanted to stay over. And he would drive my car back and pick me up at the airport the next day, and actually brought me hundreds of pounds of 25-pound plates and barbells to work out in my apartment because we were on the road so much, his own personal gym equipment, and so I could get a workout in before you get back in the car and drive another 400 miles to a town. And so he was very compassionate on that end of my wanting to keep my physique, and he just became one of the probably the most entertaining wrestlers in the history of our business. I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, my God, I could watch him, and I watched him develop.
And he started with tie-dye. A lot of people don't know that. Your ex-wife actually gave him his first blonde hair job.
This is true.
And he used to come out with a tie-dye shirt when he first started.
Oh, yeah, I don't know if we should mention that, my ex-wife. But anyway, no, I'm just joking. Bunny, he came, Bunny. He came over to my house in Minneapolis. He was getting ready to hit the road. He brought a bottle of wine and had a big cake made, and my ex-wife Bunny was going to bleach his hair for the first time ever. And so he got his first bleach blonde hair job done at my house, and opened up the bottle of wine, and we celebrated and ate carrot cake, and he says, "Superstar, I'm on the road. I'm officially hitting the road. And he left, and we hugged each other, and the rest is history, man. Ric Flair, the Nature Boy. What a hard act to follow.
Can we get a woo from you?
Huh? Woo, yeah. I got a painting that I did of the Nature Boy right here.
Nature Boy
yeah,
Ric Flair.
Yeah,
so this is actually a copy.
Yeah, just a photograph. It's just a photograph of the original that I gave him, sent him as a gift to honor him. And I think I captured him pretty good, given the woo, the famous woo.
I accidentally entered the studio.
Sticking on the protege topic, another guy that you actually inspired to get in the business was Jesse the Body Ventura, who, in my opinion, him and Jim Ross are the greatest two commentators in the history of the wrestling business. Certainly the most entertaining commentators. And Jesse had a great wrestling career, and he pretty much took your gimmick. He came out.
Oh, yes. And what's great about Jesse is he admits it.
Yeah.
He freely admitted.
Very loyal to you.
Oh, yes. He said, I took everything from superstar Billy Graham I could take.
Yeah.
Because I saw.
He knew you were the best.
Yeah, well, it was a great compliment, and it was so funny because a lot of the fans were so jealous back then that. Do you know that Jesse Ventura is trying to look like you, superstar? And he's taking this look and he's taking that look. And I said, yeah, but that's a compliment when you think about it, And so
he used to actually tape record your promos and listen to it while he was driving.
Yes,
that's one, and he's known as one of the best promo guys ever.
Yes, absolutely one of the best promo guys. And a funny story: as soon as he got back from the Navy SEALs, came back to Minneapolis, saw me wrestle, said, "That's what I want to do, and that's who I want to be like." Then he immediately bleached his hair blonde, and he got a job as a bouncer in a biker club.
Oh, really?
And yes, he was a bouncer in a biker club with blonde hair. And one night, a biker chick walked in and said, a very attractive biker chick walked in and said, "Oh my God, you look like superstar Billy Graham." We did kind of favor each other. And he said, "Well, I should. He's my brother, And so she says, "Really?" She says, "He really has a nice body." and he says, "Yeah." He says, "I want to get a body like him. It's so nice. I want a body just like superstars." She says, "No, I mean, he's got a real nice body." So Jesse says to this biker chick, true story, says, "Look, if you want to get to superstar Billy Graham, you got to go through me first." Well, it ends up that they fall in love, and he marries her, and she becomes the first lady of.
She was the
biker chick.
He was a governor.
Terry Ventura married him, and then she was the first lady of Minnesota.
Now, there's a great picture of when he was governor, I believe, of you and your current wife.
Yes,
35
Valerie.
Years, I think Valerie, and him and his wife, who he actually picked up because of you.
Yes, exactly.
So, you've stayed in contact with him over the years, and in his book, I Ain't Got Time to Bleed, he actually says some very complimentary things. So I'm going to guess you're very proud of him.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Your reaction when I guess you could say Hulk Hogan maybe has become the biggest star of all your proteges, but Jesse Ventura was probably the most successful of your proteges because he became governor of an actual state.
Yes.
And he's been in movies with Arnold Schwarzenegger, another one of your friends, which we'll get into later. But were you shocked when he became governor? I guess you're very proud of him.
Yeah, of course. I was not shocked because he had such drive and focus. He really had this drive about him. And when he set his mind to do something, he did it. He was one of those types that did not back off. And what he wanted, he went after and got it. Right. And so I was very proud when he became and a good governor.
Yeah,
by the way,
he did a great job.
Yeah, and my personal friend.
And he's done great after the governor.
Exactly.
TV show now.
Oh, of course, it's amazing.
And he might even be running for president.
Yeah.
He's trying to start a grassroots campaign.
I know. I'll vote for him.
I think he's honest, and he's not a career politician.
He's honest.
That's
absolutely.
What I like about
absolutely. Yeah.
And he is honest. He says the truth about everything.
That's right.
I believe him, and he's a very smart man. And, we're going to get into your third protege after, who's probably your most successful wrestling protege. He's probably the most successful wrestler
by far
of all time.
Yeah.
Hulk Hogan.
Yep.
So maybe before I ask you the next question, we'll talk about Hulk Hogan. What was it like first meeting him? Because when he was trying to break into the business, he wasn't having much luck. They didn't like him in Florida because in those days wrestling was divided up into territories, and he was from Florida, and there was a lot of jealousy because he grew up with a lot of the Florida wrestlers, and they didn't want him to become a star. So one of the people he went to for help getting into the business, because he loved wrestling, he went to the matches and would watch you.
Right, correct.
So he asked you for advice.
Yes, in a nightclub frequented by the wrestlers after the Tuesday night matches in Tampa, we all would go in and relax and frequent the nightclub, and in walks the future Hulk Hogan.
Right.
And he comes up to me and says, "Superstar, I want to know how to do two things. I want to know how to become a professional wrestler." He said, "I have tried my best. I've gone to the office and they won't let me even have a tryout inside the sportatorium,
right,
inside their personal training
where
they did their taping and everything." Yeah. And I said, "Well, you know, brother, you're just going to have to go away to some other town and learn how to be a wrestler, you know, or be persistent, you know, and not give up. And then eventually the door will open for you, because look at you. You're 6'6", 6'7", whatever he was, you know, you're
300 some odd.
Yeah, huge man." And I said, the opportunity is just waiting for you. It just has to happen. So just hang on and keep trying. Keep beating the door down. Don't give up. Don't give up. I encouraged him.
Yeah.
I encouraged him. And so, and as it turned out, he took my look.
The ear cuff, you started.
The ear cuff, yeah.
Ripping the brothers.
yeah.
Pythons.
The Python took everything, and
When he
again.
was a heel, he took the beard, because when you were a heel in Japan,
Yes.
you had the black beard.
Had the beard,
And the
yes,
tie,
yes.
the bleach blonde hair.
Yes.
Just like
Yes.
Ric Flair, just like Jesse Ventura.
Yes, but that's another compliment.
Oh, yeah,
that's
it's a
another
great
compliment. It's like
And he took it to the next level, and he made the best out of it.
Oh, and the timing was perfect.
Right.
It was absolutely perfect. It was just perfect. And then Vince
of course,
got
the
wind of
physique,
him, and then the whole world opened up, and he became probably the world's most famous wrestler ever.
Right.
Nobody will be more famous than Hulk Hogan to this day.
Right.
And so I'm very proud of the legacy that I've left with just those three guys.
Yeah.
The top three guys, you could say, almost in.
Probably the top three of the most known wrestlers in the history
Yes.
of the business.
Yes.
Not only in wrestling, but they've all had successful careers
Yeah.
outside of wrestling.
Yeah.
And speaking of those three, what I'm going to ask you now is, they're all proteges of you, and of course they all have a lot of animosity towards each other. That's public fact. Of course, they all want to be the number one protege. Was there ever animosity between Hogan and Flair that you noticed? Any personal animosity outside of their wrestling?
I didn't notice any of that, because I was really pretty much a loner.
Yeah.
And I wrestled and I took care of my own business, and so I didn't get involved in other issues.
Yeah.
But and so I'm sure all that's water underneath the bridge by now.
Yeah.
And I know some things came up with me and Hulk that I really regretted, and we finally worked out, and now we're great friends, and I'm very proud of that.
Yeah.
But there were some issues that came up, and like I said, it's all water under the bridge,
And there's a
everything
lot of truth to those issues.
Yes.
And but it's over. It was a very
over.
rough time in wrestling
Right.
in general, and
Yes.
a lot of secrets were coming out at
Yes.
that time.
Yes.
But those have all been taken care of.
Yeah.
And that's over. And
Yeah.
Hogan and Jesse Ventura. I mean, after Jesse won governor, Hogan said he was running for president on Jay Leno, and they've always exchanged lots of back and forth, both in the public and in their books. And what do you think of this whole Hulk Hogan, Jesse Ventura feud? Are you going to answer who are you more proud of, Hulk Hogan or Jesse Ventura? That's a big question. Everybody
My
wants
God,
to know.
yeah. It's impossible to answer that one. It's impossible to answer. They're both so accomplished.
Yes.
You know, and they're both household names.
Oh, yes.
They're household names, and have gone far beyond just the wrestling world. And the Hulk, of course, with all the Rocky with Stallone and those movies, and then Jesse with
Man and Predator.
Exactly right. And then Jesse getting hooked up with Arnold and in his movies.
The Running Man that he was in with Arnold too, one of those movies.
Exactly. The Predator, I believe he was in. And so Jesse's had a tremendous run. They both had an awesome, but they're both talented.
Yeah.
See, they're both talented. But I believe that Jesse Ventura, out of the three men we're talking about, has the most raw talent out of all of them. His speaking ability, like you said, matches the Jim Ross in the commentary department.
Yes.
And Jesse's speaking ability and his charisma is so natural, it just oozes out of him, and he just demands your attention. So I think for as far as charisma overall, Jesse Ventura is hard to beat.
Very interesting to know. And let's move on more to Madison Square Garden and your history at Madison Square Garden. You had a lot of famous matches in Madison Square Garden. What are some of your favorites when you were WWF World Heavyweight Champion?
Oh, well, there's no question that, first of all, my favorite opponent we will name as the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes.
Right.
Dusty was always...
Who was another protege.
Yes, I had some influence on Dusty, but also Dusty, to be perfectly honest, influenced me as well.
Well, your speaking, your rap,
yes,
very similar.
Yes.
Massive crowd.
Yes.
Wasn't it 3 or so MSG sellouts?
Oh, we were in a row, three in a row, ending with the bull rope match.
Right.
The famous bull rope match. And
where you were almost crucified.
Yes, and where he wrapped the rope around me and hung me, and my feet were about that far off the ground. And so it was but it was absolutely magic with Dusty.
Right.
Because he had so much charisma, and I had a reasonable amount of charisma myself, and so we just gelled together, and we had fun in the ring.
Oh yeah, you could tell. You could tell the promos were great, and there was a lot of celebrities watching those matches.
Yeah,
I mean, Andy Warhol was in the crowd often.
Yes,
and what was that like? Like all the top people in New York would actually come out and pack Madison Square Garden.
Yeah. They loved it. They loved it because it was pure entertainment. It was pure entertainment. And like I said, there's no question that Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream, the humble son of a plumber. How did he come up with all this stuff? My God, that he just captivated the audience with his promos, and it was almost overkill. Because he would cut a promo and I would cut a promo, and they were so out there, and so it was like, wait a minute, we have too much going on here. All we need is one guy cutting a promo like this, but we both had so much charisma that it was just really, really, really exciting. It really was, and of course my favorite opponent of all time, no doubt about it.
He's got a son in WWE now. Cody Rhodes or something?
Yeah, Cody. But of course, the sons I found out, and some of the daughters, they just can't match the father's ability and charisma.
Those are huge boots to fill.
Oh yes, of course. So, but they're trying.
Yeah,
they're trying, and they're giving it everything they have. So good for them. Hope they do well.
So Jesse was obviously a big draw. You had a lot of huge matches in Madison Square Garden.
Ivan Putski.
Yes.
Polish
Ivan
Power.
Putski. Now there was actually you're a huge Bob Dylan fan.
Yes.
Massive Bob Dylan fan, but you've never met him. And you told me a story about you, Ivan Putski, and Bob Dylan. And do you want to share that with everybody?
Yes, it was a great,
terrible story.
Terrible story for me, I was just looking at a new Bob Dylan Rolling Stone book that's out on the market now by Rolling Stone. 40 years of Bob Dylan interviews. And by the way, thank you for the gift of that incredible Bob Dylan album and all the information of that. I know that probably cost a couple $100. That is a real in-depth masterpiece of a book on Bob Dylan with photos and everything. So I really appreciate that. But we were
unique and talented individual. I've actually, I can't say I'm a huge fan of the music.
Sure,
But because
sure.
I'm a huge fan of yours and I respect you a lot, I actually have listened to some of it and it's very interesting.
Oh, the writing. He's
can
written
see
over
why you
600,
love him so
600
much.
songs. I mean,
Yeah.
he's a writing genius. And so I'm wrestling Ivan Putski. We're in a Denny's restaurant in Portland, Maine, and he is on tour, the Rolling Thunder Tour, 1975, with Joan Baez and some other folks, and they pull into a Denny's restaurant, and I'm at the far end of the counter eating. Putski's right next to the cash register, and these guys walk in, and they to order food to go, and they look at Putski and say, "Aren't you Ivan Putski?" He says, yeah, Dobra, you know, he's working his gimmick. and they
Bob
said,
Dylan knew who Ivan Putski was.
oh yeah, well, they said, but we have Bob Dylan out in the van. We just finished a concert. He said he would love to meet you. And Putski could care less about meeting Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
I'm the mark for Bob Dylan down at the far end, not knowing any. So they take Putski out into the van, meets Dylan, and sees a poster. They got a poster of me and Ivan Putski versus superstar Billy Graham up in their van and on the Rolling Thunder Review. And Putski comes back in and says, Dobra, guess who I just met? Bob Dylan. I said, what? You met Bob Dylan? Why didn't you come and get me? He said, we have to Kayfabe. We have to Kayfabe. I said, forget about Kayfabe, brother. This is Bob Dylan. Man, this is more than Kayfabe. So it was a hilarious story. And I actually got to know his manager very well, and as it turned out, that Bob Dylan was a pretty much fan of mine too, and so I went to a lot of his concerts and got complimentary tickets from his manager, and just never got a chance to meet him in person. But now he's 72 years old and still on tour,
Yeah, very
and
impressive.
still on tour, and just absolutely incredible. So.
And you mentioned Kayfabe there with you and Putski. And Kayfabe was a big deal in those days. For those of you
Yeah.
that don't know what Kayfabe is, everyone thought wrestling was 100%
Yes.
legitimate athletic
Yep.
contest. That's how it was sold.
Yep.
And the people that didn't believe it, you had to make them believe it.
Yep.
And you would often be attacked by fans.
Oh,
because
yes.
of this, because they actually thought you were this terrible superstar Billy Graham heelish character. You had your car vandalized.
Yes.
You want to go over a couple of the stories about.
Well, a big incident happened in Long Beach, in California, of all places, and my daughter had just been born, Capella, in 1972, and I was training with Arnold at the time, and I was wrestling in Long Beach, and as a heel, and when the matches were over, I came out to the parking lot, and I looked at my car, and the hood had been lifted up on my car, and all the spark plug wires had been pulled out, distributor cap crushed, the tires were punctured. It looked like a war scene. You know, it looked like a car bombing almost in today's standards.
Yeah.
You know, and so,
Like
my God.
terrorists bombed your car.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and so, my God, I had to have my car towed in, and the next morning I was supposed to bring my daughter home from the hospital, Capella, who was just born.
Yeah.
So unable to, I called Arnold and asked him, would you mind going to the hospital with me and bringing my daughter home, Capella, from the hospital? And so Arnold is in a chorus. And Arnold, being so nervous and cautious, took the side streets and hit every bump instead of the main Santa Monica Boulevard down to Ocean Boulevard and over to the hotel. But he didn't want to disturb the newborn, my baby. And so it was a real funny story.
He ended up being the goddaughter.
Yeah,
Still
he's
is
the godfather of my daughter.
the
Yes,
godfather of
yeah,
your
godfather. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And he takes it pretty seriously.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. Yeah, he's called her, stayed in touch with her, and he's a
You
man.
a nice letter that's actually in your WWE book. Just
That's
after
right.
Your first liver
That's right.
transplant.
That's right.
And
Congratulating me on the liver transplant and everything, and stayed in touch, and has always asked people about me and my health and everything. So I really respect him.
From the first or second week he arrived.
Oh, 1 week after in this country that he arrived in this country, I met him at the original Gold's Gym in Santa Monica, and he could barely speak English, and I was training late, and he came in with Dave Draper and Art Zeller, the photographer, was a very famous photographer for Weeder at the time, and we just hit it off right away and took these classic black and white photos of the first meeting with Arnold, and became instant friends. And I started training with him, and the rest is history. Yeah.
And what was he like to train with? You always hear about what a crazy, dedicated trainer.
Oh yes, and very intense, very focused. There was no nonsense. This was not a game with Arnold. This was bodybuilding. This was Mr. Olympia, and this was serious stuff. And his drive and his focus. I've often compared Vince McMahon to Arnold because they both have this incredible drive and focus, which has made them successful in their separate areas. And so you can't have a successful organization like the WWE without having focus and drive and determination. And that's what Arnold had. I mean, he was dedicated. There was no monkey business. He trained every day for hours and hours, and then trained at night. And the dieting, the discipline. Another factor that you could add to Vince McMahon, discipline, to do what you have to do to be successful. So that rubbed off on me, his training discipline, and I really gained from it personally in my own physique, training with Arnold, and so it rubbed off on me, and I saw a man so dedicated and committed to his ultimate goal of being Mr. Olympia, I think about 7 or 8 times.
Yeah,
something like that.
Times, I
yeah,
think.
something
Very
like that.
impressive. It's still a record, I think.
Yeah. So
plus a movie star.
Plus
Some
a
of the
movie
biggest
star.
movies of all time.
Yes.
Plus governor. You
Yeah,
actually
plus governor.
close friends with 2 governors.
2 governors,
How many
yes.
people can say that?
Yeah. 2 governors who were nobodies.
Yeah.
And they just made it. They made it themselves. And so it really shows you, what self-determination and self-confidence can do for a person in this world, and given a chance in our country, the United States of America. Like I have said about Vince McMahon in a recent posting that you did for me on my Facebook, that he has earned every bit of success that the WWE has to this day, because he went out and took it the old-fashioned way, the American way. He earned it. He earned what he took and what he
very aggressively,
very aggressive, and he also
confidence for
and
that.
he also Vince also was a gentleman in the process, because he could have just taken the territories, but instead he offered people like Paul Bosch money for the Houston territory, and offered different people.
Vergagna, but Vergagna turned it down.
Vergagna turned it down like a
gave
fool.
Stu Hart money as well.
Exactly.
He was very
So
polite.
Vince was very generous in his approach to. He said it's time.
In the top stars' jobs after
Exactly.
family members.
Exactly right.
Even the Rougeaus, when he took over the Montreal territory, he gave the Rougeaus job.
Oh, is that right? I didn't know that.
Definitely, yeah.
Well,
polite.
that's Vince McMahon. So you have these 2 people, Arnold and Vince, that I've always combined together with the drive and focus and the intensity that both of these people have that have made them successful.
Right.
And I really admire them for these qualities.
Oh, it's definitely
It's admirable.
very, very impressive. And when you were training with Arnold, you actually have quite a huge sporting background too. You played in the CFL,
Yes.
Montreal Alouettes,
Yes.
and I believe another team, Edmonton.
Calgary Stampeders.
Calgary Stampeders.
Right.
And that's where you later started off. You were trained in the dungeon for Stampede Wrestling.
Right.
And you had some tryouts with the Oakland Raiders.
Right,
which is
Oakland
pretty
Raiders,
impressive.
right.
But you actually won Best Arms in the Mr. USA bodybuilding competition.
Yes, in the Dan Lurie version of the Mr. America.
Oh, you were wrestling.
And while I was
How did you
wrestling,
find the time to do that?
Well, I had the discipline, and that came from Arnold, and that came from from being committed and dedicated and wanting to succeed at it, and so. I did it because I wanted it, and I was focused, and I was driven to do it. And it wasn't an easy thing, bodybuilding for a contest and wrestling at the same time.
No,
but I do admit the last 2 or 3 weeks I took completely off to polish myself off for the contest.
And wrestling in those days, you didn't have trainers, you didn't have companies paying for
Please.
for physiotherapy and massage therapists, and they were brutal matches, bleeding almost every match sometimes.
Yes.
Do you want to explain to us, like, just how brutal the matches were in those days?
Well, especially with Wahoo McDaniel in the Minneapolis territory. Wahoo being a really one of the
former New York Jets player.
Exactly, played pro football, and he was so red hot in Minneapolis and in the 72, 3, 4, 5 in that era that the people believed in him because he was so rugged. Yes, he was a baby face, but he was a rugged baby face, and he was a tough, legitimately tough. He was tough.
Go on.
Oh my God! I hit him in the head with a steel chair. Should have been a working, and I thought it was a working shot, but it put 7 stitches in the back of his head, and after he'd already cut in front of his head. So, and we did promos later that night back in the studio, and he said, "Superstar, you hit me a little hard with that chair there, brother." I said, "Man, I apologize." He just laughed it off.
Yeah.
The guy was so tough, but people believed in him. And they believed in our angle that we shot, setting up our feud that went on for almost a full year and selling everything out, arenas and high school gyms and coliseums and whatever all across the country. And we sold out Green Bay for the first time ever for any event in Green Bay, Wisconsin. We sold out in their building there that held about 12,000 people.
Right.
The first sellout ever was in that building for any event was Wahoo and myself in a strap match. Yeah.
Very impressive.
Yeah,
I mean, those were the days before pay-per-views.
Oh yes.
So you really had to earn those crowds.
Yes, you did. You had to really cut a promo, and you had to be believable. And I was believable. I had the 22-inch arms. I had the physique. And Wahoo was believable. He was tough as nails. And our matches were almost borderline shoots.
Yeah.
They were really tough as hell.
Strap matches. We were actually taking leather straps to the back.
Yeah, and leaving welts.
I was saying earlier, a lot of people call wrestling fake. But, I mean, if someone hit you with a leather strap on the street, you beat the hell out of them. But in wrestling, you have to willingly sometimes take those straps.
It was accepted.
Yeah.
It was accepted. So that was one of my favorite periods of time was that Minneapolis run because of the Wahoo
that was
competition.
One of the biggest territories in the world at the time.
Yes, absolutely.
Money, big city, big crowds.
Yep, all the way from Minneapolis to Denver to Winnipeg, down to Omaha, Vergania.
A legitimate wrestler, NCAA champion, I believe.
Right.
He almost went to the Olympics.
Right.
Very tough guys in that territory.
Absolutely. Baron von Raschke, all these guys, so it was really a talented territory and a really a wrestler's dream to go to from there.
And you see a lot of magazine covers from those days. You probably made because of your physique. And you bleed a lot in those days. There's tons of covers of you either just flexing or covered in thick, bloody goo.
Yes.
And blood is real in wrestling. For those of you that don't know this, blood is real. And especially in the 70s and 80s, blood was used very often.
Yeah. There was a constant. And Roy Shire, the promoter of the San Francisco territory, where I was there for a year with Pat Patterson as his tag team partner, as I mentioned earlier, and very fortunate to be underneath his wing and carried me through. He would sometimes call for blade jobs every night of the week, and he said there's not a problem. He said you just cut in a different spot every night. You don't have to worry about cutting over the same area. Just cut in a different spot. So that was the mindset.
How would you do it? Like in those days, how would you blade yourself?
I would just break up a Gillette blue blade and put tape around it and leave a little bit exposed and tape it to my finger and then put a little tape over it when it's time to do the actual blade. Just cut my head and then break the blade off and then throw it on the ground so we wouldn't accidentally cut each other during the rest of the match. So and Wahoo always carried his blade in his tights and would cut his head and then put the blade back in the tights. So
there's a lot of wrestlers in those days that would actually reuse blades. Share blades.
Oh my God.
Days, let's keep in mind, AIDS wasn't discovered until around the 80s.
Exactly.
Late 80s. hepatitis, which is a huge one now, affects more than 170 million people
worldwide.
Disease. That's just hepatitis C alone.
God.
That wasn't known until around 1990, wasn't proven. So you didn't think about that type of stuff in those days. So obviously you must think it's a very good thing that now WWE has a no blood policy where there's no more purposeful blading.
Oh, yes, absolutely. My God, you're saving people's lives.
Yeah.
I caught hepatitis C from the commingling of blood.
Right.
I mean, there's no question about it. You look at some of the photos in the 70s, as you just mentioned, was a decade of bloodbaths.
Right.
I mean, from Terry Funk.
Wrestlers that have died from hepatitis.
Yes, exactly right. So I was very fortunate that I received a transplant in October of 2002 here in Phoenix of the Mayo.
22-year-old.
Yes, a young girl, 23 years old, killed just a few blocks from my apartment here, and she was a donor, and they had to give me, I was the worst liver in the state of Arizona, #1 on the transplant list, and the doctor, Dr. Mulligan at the Mayo Clinic, told me that when he pulled that liver out of me, the old liver, and put this young girl's liver in, he saw my liver, that he estimated I had a small handful of living cells left and maybe 30 days to live on this planet when I got the liver transplant. So I dedicate, of course, my rest of my life to Katie Gilroy, who was my liver donor, a young girl, and saved my life being a donor. So sign your donor card. That's a good message. Sign your donor cards.
And on the topic of bleeding and stuff, what do you think of these barbed wire matches where basically wrestlers are thrown into this barbed wire, it breaks their skin, and then the other wrestler's thrown in, which basically puts their blood directly into the other person's body? It's just like sharing a needle or a razor blade, which are two of the main ways of catching hepatitis, other than there's also transplants before 1990. They didn't test for hepatitis. Organ donations before 1990, dirty tattoo needles. Dirty piercings. There's a lot of ways to catch it. A lot of famous people have it. Evel Knievel actually died from hepatitis C. He caught it from a blood transfusion. The Aerosmith frontman had it. He was cured. He took the treatment and was cured. He was also on American Idol. Mick Jagger was cured. Pamela Anderson still has it.
Yes, exactly.
So, I mean, it's out there.
It's out there.
So what's your advice to independent wrestlers?
Oh, well, you know what? You can't even give them advice because they're not going to take it. They're going to do what they want to do. They're going to do these crazy barbed wire matches and anything else that comes down the pike. They're going to do it. So you can't even suggest or say don't do it because they're going to do it. No matter what you or I say, it's going to happen. It's going to happen, and it's extremely barbaric. These barbed wire.
They're not making any money,
and they're not making any money. You know, and they're hoping and praying that someday Vince will see them or TNA will see them or somebody, and they'll make it to the big time. But in the meantime, they're slaughtering themselves and potentially going to pick up a deadly disease.
And what do you think of guys like Abdullah the Butcher, who has hepatitis C and won't admit it publicly? And actually, in my particular case, he cut me with a razor blade that he had used on himself, which is actually more dangerous than just bleeding with someone because it puts your blood directly into the other person's bloodstream when you share a razor blade like that. And it's not common in professional wrestling to cut somebody without permission with a razor blade with blood on it, is it?
Well, there's no question it's not common, and not only that, I believe that the WWE putting Abdullah the Butcher into the Hall of Fame, knowing his history, knowing that he's a bloodthirsty, bloodlusting, demonic possessed person. I saw the videotape of him cutting his own head first, and then cutting you without your permission, without your knowledge, which is unacceptable, absolutely unacceptable and criminal, and you ended up.
Well, basically, it's an assault.
It's an assault. It's an assault with a deadly weapon. Hepatitis C, as you mentioned earlier, can be deadly. People do die of it.
Blade is a deadly weapon. You can't bring it on an airplane. You can cut someone's throat with it. You can blind a person with it. Or you can infect them with the disease.
Yes, exactly. And which you were infected with, and now you've gone through these.
And there's a court proceeding charging him with negligence, assault, and battery. Basically,
In the Canadian
ongoing
court
right now
system.
in the Ontario Superior Court of Justice. So for people like that won't admit that they have hepatitis C, even though all these celebrities admit it,
Yeah.
and it's a common disease.
Yeah.
What do you think of people that not only won't admit it, but won't help? Because even if you save one person, even if you save one indie wrestler
Yeah.
that hears us talking,
Yeah.
first of all, it's very expensive. I'm going through hepatitis C treatment right now. It's $60,000.
Oh,
and
my God.
It's deadly. You can actually die from the treatment. So what do you think of a guy like that won't do anything to actually help create awareness and help prevent this from happening to other people?
I think he should be put on. Did you ever see the movie Papillon? Yeah, by Dustin Hoffman. You need to watch that, starring Dustin Hoffman and Steve McQueen. He should be put on Devil's Island, and he is an absolute, total barbaric human being to have assaulted you. I've seen the footage of that match with you and him cutting your head after he's cutting his own head and then assaulting you with that razor blade with his blood on it, inserting it into your head, cutting you, and you ending up with hepatitis C, and the hell you've gone through in your treatments, the side effects of these.
38 pounds right now.
You've lost 38 pounds. You lost
That's
38
just
pounds.
a small amount of the problems that I have to experience.
Oh my
And
God.
not just me, but my whole family and all my friends.
Exactly.
Even you, we've become close over the past few years
Yeah.
due to many reasons, but a lot of it's our hepatitis C connection.
Yes.
And
Yes.
You know directly how it's affected me, and I know how it's affected you.
Exactly. Exactly.
you've
And
got-
I think that the now that it's been proven through your legal endeavors that Abdullah has tested positive for hepatitis C, that he should be automatically withdrawn from the WWE Hall of Fame.
already
He should have never been in to begin with.
Well, did he wrestle in Madison Square Garden?
Never. He's never wrestled one match for the WWE.
Okay.
Not even a match, let alone Madison Square Garden. He's never wrestled once for the WWE or the WWF or going back to the WWE,
Probably
3W.
because they couldn't trust him.
They couldn't.
to follow
Oh,
the
no.
wrestler's code.
No.
Because you got to
No.
protect your. Yes, wrestling is very rough, but you're not in there to permanently injure your opponent. Sometimes it gets rough. Sometimes it
It's
gets a little
physical
more
sport.
real. It is. It's a physical sport. It's predetermined, but it's physical. But you're not agreeing to risking your life when you get in there.
No.
You're certainly not agreeing to the risk of death. You're there to entertain the people.
Exactly.
And perform. We're actors. We're athletic actors.
Exactly right. And that's one of my real problems. That's why I
Not from
submitted.
Sudan.
Exactly right. Yeah, Windsor, Ontario. You work at a car wash.
He's a businessman.
Exactly.
He owns multiple businesses.
That's right. That's right. And I submitted to the WWE when he was inducted to the Hall of Fame that I wanted out of the Hall of Fame because there's no justification to put a monster of his level into the WWE Hall of Fame, knowing his background and looking at these huge, ugly, disgusting gouges in his forehead from self-inflicted
Well, he cut
razor
himself
blade.
almost every match.
Every match he'd cut himself.
Did he have to do that?
You know,
why,
no, of
why
course
did you cut
not,
yourself
because he's
every match?
obsessed. Yeah, I think he's actually demented mentally. I think there's 50 years he's been doing this, and I
He
don't.
only stopped wrestling when my accusations went public. He was wrestling right up until the time that I publicly brought out the hepatitis C accusations. And one of the reasons I came out public was to stop this from happening, because I really care about the wrestling business.
Yes, you do.
And I care about people
Yes.
in general.
Yes.
And I don't want this to happen to anyone else. So you were actually proud when you were inducted into the WWE Hall
Yes.
of Fame. I saw Triple H inducted you.
Yes.
Who's now part of the McMahon family.
Yes.
And you still actually remain friends with Triple H.
Oh, he's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, and I believe I'll go on record as saying that I believe Triple H is the best modern era champion of the WWE ever, of the modern era. I believe Bruno, of course, was of his era the greatest champion of all time. But in this new modern era, I believe that Triple H is by far the greatest champion that's ever walked, including myself, that's ever walked down that aisle.
Body, from a wrestling ability,
From
a
everything,
promo
the whole
ability.
package, his promo ability, his believability in the ring, his physique that he's worked incredibly hard to maintain, and his wrestling style, he has the whole
Got a great mind
package.
for the business. business too.
Yeah, a great mind, and he is dedicated. He's committed. I'm a fan of his. I'm a huge fan of Triple H. I adore the guy. I think he is. I'll go on record saying that he is the greatest champion of the modern era for WWE. Flat out, period. No question about it.
He was a fan of yours too.
He was a fan of mine. He was a fan of mine. So I'm returning the favor. Triple H.
So the whole thing was, you were proud of being in the Hall of Fame, and the reason you
Yes.
asked to be taken out of the WWE Hall of Fame was not because you were bitter. It was because you couldn't understand why they were putting Abdullah the Butcher in the Hall of Fame when they have a no blood policy, when the Macho Man Randy Savage is not in the Hall of Fame.
Of all people.
And it's like, why would you put Abdullah the Butcher in before the Macho Man Randy Savage, who sold out Madison Square Garden many times,
man.
is a legend in WWE wrestling,
Right.
not just
Right.
independence.
Right.
And truly actually helped build the WWE
Absolutely.
in the 80s and,
Yes.
and
Yes.
in the 90s. So
Yes, yeah. So that was my problem, was the no blood policy of the WWE, and then inducting the biggest blood leech in the world of pro wrestling, and knowing, and them knowing his background. They're not stupid, and Triple H and Vince and the whole staff and the whole all the folks who work there. I mean, they know Abdullah the Butcher has to cut himself and his opponents almost in every match, like you say, that he has a chance, and they know that history.
And
Why induct him into your Hall of Fame when you have a no blood policy? You're on.
contradictory.
It's very contradictory, and it really upset me because I caught hepatitis C from the Sharon Cobain. I almost died from it.
Suffering severe health
You know,
problems.
yes, I'm still having, and I'm 10 years out post liver transplant. I had to have a liver transplant.
Yeah.
You know, thank God you're not going to have a liver transplant, because you're on your well on your way to being cured of hepatitis C. But it's hell that you've been going through, and so that was the only
There's no
reason.
question it's taken years off my life, no matter, even if I
Yeah.
get cured.
Yeah.
There's years that have been taken off my life.
So that's my big issue
and
of
you-
wanting out of the Hall of Fame.
And just to be clear, because there's been a lot of rumor, Abdullah gave away his Hall of Fame ring publicly because he said that's all they're going to give
Yeah.
me. He wanted more. Now you gave
Very
it away,
selfish.
not as an insult to WWE. You needed money.
I didn't give it away. I sold it.
Yeah, you sold
I
it.
sold it to a gentleman in England to help buy anti-rejection medications for my liver.
Right.
I needed a liver transplant, and I needed to keep that liver. I needed to keep my body from rejecting it, and it cost money.